Have you ever felt a space shift? You walk into a room and the layout does not make sense. The door moved. The staircase leads to a solid ceiling. And that wall, the one that was not there yesterday, is now blocking your only way out. This is not a glitch in your perception. It is the daily reality inside the Winchester Mystery House. Sarah Winchester, the heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune, spent 38 years, 24 hours a day, in a state of constant construction. People called her insane. But as we dig into this anomaly, it becomes clear that she was not just building a house. She was coding a containment protocol. Those doors that open into thin air, the obsession with the number 13, it was not madness. It was architecture designed to confuse something that could not be stopped by physical walls. Today we are breaking down this house like a piece of corrupt hardware. Are we looking at a sanctuary or a prison? If you want to keep track of these anomalies, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. We are archiving the things that should not exist. I am the lead investigator, and the file is open. Are you ready to enter the labyrinth? To truly understand the Winchester house, we have to look at the source of the fortune, the Winchester repeating rifle. It was known as the gun that won the West. But to the thousands of people who felt the cold sting of its lead, it was something else entirely. It was a harvest tool. Sarah Winchester did not pull the triggers herself, but she inherited the massive, blood-stained weight of every life that rifle took. The curse did not start with a haunting. It started with silence. After the sudden, mysterious deaths of her infant daughter and then her husband, Sarah became a woman haunted by the living and the dead. She turned to a medium in Boston, desperate for answers. The message she received back was a life sentence. She was told that the spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifles were coming for her, and they would never stop. There was only one way to survive. She had to move west. She had to keep building, and she had to ensure the construction never, ever stopped. For 38 years, the sound of hammers and saws replaced the sound of her own heartbeat. She wasn't building a mansion for luxury. She was building a labyrinth for the damned. Every room she added, every staircase that led to nowhere, was a calculated trap designed to confuse the ghosts of the fallen. She was trying to outrun a debt that could never be settled with money. She was paying a blood debt that was being extracted one floor, one nail, and one room at a time. But as the house grew larger, the spirits didn't leave. They simply moved in. If you step inside the Winchester house today, you aren't just walking into a mansion. You are walking into a blueprint of a mental collapse. Sarah Winchester did not have an architect. She did not have a master plan. Instead, she would wander the halls at night, sketching designs on napkins and scraps of paper, fueled by a terrifying belief that if the construction stopped, her life would end. Let's look at the anomalies. First, consider the staircase to nowhere. It is a grand, beautiful staircase, complete with polished wood and elegant railings. But it does not lead to a second floor. It rises 13 steps, turns, and hits the ceiling. Why would she build that? If you ask the skeptics, they'll say it was just a mistake during one of the many renovations. But if you look at the layout of the house, it becomes clear. These were not mistakes. They were baffles. They were defensive traps. The spirits, or whatever entities were stalking her, were believed to be confused by erratic, non-linear architecture. By creating stairs that ended abruptly and hallways that turned into dead ends, she was trying to force these entities into a state of cognitive dissonance. She was trying to build a place where the dead would get lost. Then, there are the doors. There are doors in this house that open to nothing. Imagine standing on the second floor, turning a handle, and stepping forward. You wouldn't enter a room. You would fall 12 feet into the bushes below. Why build a door there? In our files, we classify this as spatial denied access. It suggests that Sarah wasn't just managing the house. She was managing the geometry of the space itself. Every cabinet door that opens into a brick wall, every window placed in the middle of a floret, was a frantic, daily battle against the unseen. The house is a chaotic mess of 6 stories, over 160 rooms, and 2,000 doors. It is a monument to the fear of the future. But as we analyze the patterns, we have to ask ourselves a deeper question. Was she just building traps for the ghosts? Or was she unknowingly building a gateway for something else to come through? Now, we need to address the reason for the chaos. What exactly was living inside those walls? Over the decades, the staff, the contractors, and the visitors have reported the same recurring sightings. There is the wheelbarrow ghost. Multiple groundskeepers have described seeing a figure pushing a wheelbarrow through the gardens at night. He looks solid, real, and hard-working. But when the staff approaches him to ask for help, the figure simply turns the corner and vanishes into thin air. He never speaks. He never looks back. He is always working, as if he is caught in a temporal loop, eternally tending to a garden that was paved over a century ago. Then, there is the shadow in the hallway. We have collected files on a tall, dark entity spotted specifically near the seance room. Witnesses describe a feeling of extreme drop in temperature, followed by a heavy, suffocating pressure in their chest. They don't just see this entity, they feel its intent. It is described as a collector. It doesn't walk, it glides, moving with a fluid, unnatural rhythm that defies human movement. But the most disturbing reports come from the Winchester employees. These weren't tourists looking for a scare. These were the men who worked the saws and hammers for Sarah. They reported hearing heavy boots walking above them when the house was supposedly empty. They reported tools being moved from one room to another, locked behind doors that were nailed shut just the night before. But there is a specific type of spirit that dominates the archive. These are the soldier specters. Sarah didn't just invite any ghost into her home, specifically dealing with the psychic fallout of the Winchester repeating rifle. Eyewitnesses have described seeing men in uniforms, men from the Civil War era, standing in the corners of rooms, staring at their own hands as if they were still holding a trigger. They are confused, they are angry, and they appear to be waiting. We have to ask, if these spirits are truly the victims of the Winchester weapons, why are they here? Are they trapped in the house because they have unfinished business? Or is it because Sarah, through her obsessive construction, literally built an anchor that kept them from moving on to whatever comes next? The eyewitnesses all agree on one thing. The entities in the Winchester house are not acting like normal ghosts. They don't haunt, they inhabit. They are as much a part of the floorboards and the wallpaper as the wood and the paint itself. So why do these spirits remain here? If these entities are truly the psychic fallout of the Winchester rifle, why haven't they moved on? The answer lies in the architecture itself. Think back to the blood debt we discussed. Sarah Winchester believed she was building a house, but in reality, she was creating a massive, sprawling spiritual battery. The Mok Lai Hokok eyewitness accounts are not just random ghost stories. They are proof of a failed containment system. When you look at the wheelbarrow ghost, or the soldier specters, you're seeing a malfunction. Sarah believed that by adding more rooms, more hallways, and more complexity, she could trap the energy of the dead. She treated the ghosts like data, like information that needed to be stored in an infinite loop. But there's a flaw in that logic. A loop doesn't erase the memory, it preserves it. Every time a spirit manifests in the house, it is essentially a data leak. It is a moment where the blood debt is trying to collect on what is owed. Think about the Civil War soldiers seen in the corners of the rooms. They aren't just haunting the hallways. They are anchored to the geometry of the house. They are literally part of the foundation. Sarah's curse was not that the spirits were invading her home. The curse was that she had successfully built a physical prison for their consciousness. She thought she was buying herself time. Instead, she was turning her mansion into a gravitational well for the dead. The reason the sightings continue to this day, even in 2026, is that the architecture is still doing exactly what she designed it to do. It is still trapping them. The house isn't just haunted, it's a living, breathing archive of a tragedy that refuses to end. And as we analyze these sightings, we have to face the most terrifying possibility of all. Maybe the spirits aren't trying to leave. Maybe they are waiting for the structure to finally collapse. In every archive of the Winchester Mystery House, one pattern repeats with chilling regularity: the number 13. There are 13 ceiling panels, 13 coat hooks in the closets, and 13 glass panes in the windows. In our 2026 investigation, we are looking past superstition. We are looking at physics. In acoustics and vibration science, prime numbers like 13 are used to break standing waves. A room built on a perfect symmetric structure will have predictable, stable echoes. But a room built on 13 points? The sound waves, and potentially other forms of energy, never fully settle. They stay in a state of constant, turbulent motion. This is what we classify as phase interference. By embedding 13 into the ceilings, the windows, and the hooks, Sarah was effectively turning the house into a massive acoustic jammer. She wasn't just being obsessive, she was attempting to create a frequency environment where an external consciousness couldn't find a stable point to manifest. Think of it like digital static. She was flooding the house with so much numerical noise that any entity trying to track her would lose her signal in the chaos. Modern spatial analysis suggests that the layout of the house functions as a primitive, non-Euclidean labyrinth. It is a space where the rules of distance and direction do not apply. There is a second, more mechanical explanation found in our 2026 archives. In certain architectural traditions, adding a 13th element to a structure acts as a bypass valve. It creates a deliberate flaw in the space-time geometry of the building. If you are being hunted by something that follows the linear laws of physics, your only hope is to live in a space that is fundamentally non-linear. Sarah Winchester turned her home into a fortress of prime number glitches. The 13 glass panes were not for decoration. They were filters. The 13 ceiling panels were not for aesthetics. They were baffles for a spiritual sonar. She was living inside a massive, wooden machine, designed to vibrate at a frequency that the entities couldn't harmonize with. But here is the danger of using a prime number to break reality. Once you break the stability of your environment, you cannot easily go back. You are no longer living in a house. You are living in a rift. The house is an active transmitter, a 38-year-long broadcast into the unknown. And as we look at the house today, we realize it is not just a cemetery of wood and nails. It is a permanent glitch in the architecture of our world. We need to look at why Sarah chose 13. In many occult traditions, 12 is the number of cosmic order. Think of the 12 houses of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year, or the 12 disciples. 12 represents the boundary of our known, logical universe. 13, however, is the gloa breaker. In occult geometry, 13 is the point where the cycle of 12 is forced to collapse. It is the threshold number. It is the number that acts as a gatekeeper between the physical world and the unseen. In ancient witchcraft, the 13th member of a coven was often considered the one who stood between the world. They were the mediator. They were the one who could speak to the spirits. Sarah Winchester wasn't just a grieving widow. She was a student of the occult. She understood that by constantly invoking the number 13, by building it into her floorboards and her windows, she was maintaining a constant state of threshold inside her home. She was essentially holding the door open, but using a ritualistic seal to control what could walk through it. Think of it this way. If you want to keep ghosts out, you create a perfect circle. If you want to create a space that allows you to observe them, or even trap them, you create a broken circle. You build a 13-sided frame. She wasn't trying to hide from the spirits. She was trying to build a cage that existed partially in their dimension and partially in ours. The curse wasn't that the ghosts were there. The curse was that Sarah had built a machine that allowed her to see, hear, and live among them for 3 decades. She didn't live in a house. She lived in a permanent ritual. But who was the mind behind this geometric madness? To understand the house, we must understand Sarah Winchester herself. She was not just a grieving widow. In her youth, she was known as the Belle of New Haven. She was a prodigy, fluent in 4 languages, a master of mathematics, and a deep student of architecture and philosophy. She was a woman of pure logic, until the logic of her world shattered. In 1866, her infant daughter died. 15 years later, her husband followed. Suddenly, Sarah was the richest woman in the world, earning $1,000 a day in a time when that was a king's ransom. But to Sarah, that money felt like lead. She believed every cent was soaked in the blood of those killed by the Winchester rifle. How does a woman of science end up talking to ghosts? In the late 19th century, America was consumed by spiritualism. Grief-stricken, Sarah traveled to Boston to consult a famous medium. The message she received changed her forever. The medium told her, "The spirits of the thousands killed by your family's rifles are coming for you. They took your husband. They took your child, and they will never stop, unless you keep building." For a woman trained in mathematics, this became a terrifying new equation. She didn't become a witch. She became a spiritual engineer. She applied her knowledge of structure to a problem that wasn't physical. She thought, if I cannot stop the spirits, I will build a firewall they cannot navigate. Every night she would enter her private seance room to receive new blueprints. The next morning, she would hand these nonsensical designs to her carpenters. She was using her wealth to build a machine of wood and nails, designed to confuse the dead. She wasn't building for beauty. She was trying to outbuild a blood debt. She was a brilliant mind, using the only tools she had, architecture and numbers, to fight an invisible war. But as we've seen with the frequency of 13, sometimes, when you build a cage for spirits, you end up becoming the one trapped inside. Beyond the numbers and the architecture, we have the documented anomalies. First, consider the self-moving furnishings. There are multiple reports from the 1920s of furniture moving between rooms overnight. But here is the catch. It wasn't just a chair being dragged. Workers reported that heavy, bolted-down oak cabinets would be found completely detached from the walls and placed in the center of the room, as if something was clearing space for a ritual or a movement that we could not see. Second, we have the temporal echoes. Many visitors, even in recent years, report hearing the distinct sound of a sewing machine running in the dead of night. When security checks the room, the machine is rusted, unplugged, and cold. But the sound isn't just a playback. It's an active, mechanical rhythm that vibrates through the floorboards. It's as if the house is a playback device, recording and replaying the actions of the past in real time. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, is the missing worker phenomenon. In the late 1890s, 3 laborers disappeared during the construction of the North Wing. They weren't just lost in the labyrinth. They vanished while working in a secure, enclosed hallway. Their tools were left behind, scattered on the floor, but the men themselves were never found. There were no exits. There were no hidden passages they could have crawled through. They simply ceased to exist within the physical constraints of the house. These aren't just spooky stories. If we treat the house as a living, breathing machine, as we hypothesized, these cases suggest that the machine requires more than just wood and nails to function. It requires energy. Sometimes, that energy comes from the objects inside. Sometimes, it comes from the people who walk its halls. When you step into the Winchester house, you are not just a guest. You are entering a system that has been self-correcting for over a century, and if you disrupt the flow, the house has its own ways of keeping the balance. We are now in 2026, and the archive remains open. Visitors still report the same phenomena that were documented a century ago. The cold spots, the sound of phantom hammers hitting wood, the feeling of being watched by something that is not quite human. But there is a change in the data. In recent years, our surveillance equipment has picked up something new inside the walls of the Winchester house. It is not just ghosts. It is a rhythmic, electromagnetic pulse that matches the structural frequencies Sarah built into the house. Some researchers now believe that the house has developed a form of architectural intelligence. Because the house was built to be a living, breathing machine for 38 years, it didn't stop working when Sarah died. The frequency is still broadcasting. It is still scanning. And more importantly, it is still trapping. If you visit the house today, you are not just a tourist. You are a data point. When you walk those halls, you are physically interacting with a non-Euclidean grid that was never meant for human occupancy. As we close this file, we are left with one terrifying question. If the house is still active, if the prime number glitches are still vibrating, then what is it waiting for? Is it waiting for the wood to rot? Or is it waiting for someone to finally open the door that was never meant to be opened? The mystery of Winchester isn't about what happened in the past. It is about what is still happening behind those doors today. Keep your distance. And for your own sake, do not look for the 13th step. This has been an investigation from the Whispers Beyond archives. If you value your reality, verify your surroundings. Subscribe for the next data update, and stay vigilant. The file is now closed.